be seated.
Let's see what pops up first before I connect it.
It's a long laptop.
Password. I think you'll have to log in first before it appears.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will be, I say again, good morning once more, ladies and gentlemen. We will be now moving into the penultimate sector of the program. We will be going into the hydrographic lecture, which will be facilitated by Captain N. Leroux. There's a few highlights that I would like to mention instead of doing the whole CV about Captain N. Leroux. There's a number of firsts that I will bring to your attention. Captain Nicolette Leroux, who is the current national hydrographer, joined the Navy in 2000, and she is the first female in the South African Navy to attain the Category B qualification in hydrography. And with it, she was awarded the BSc in Maritime Science by Plymouth University. She's also the first female in the hydrographic branch to obtain the Category A qualification in hydrographic survey. And with it, she was also awarded the PG Deep with distinction by Plymouth University. One of the other highlights in her career is the command of the mine countermeasure vessel, SAS Umzimkulu. And the biggest highlight, which is her current appointment, it was her appointment as the first female national hydrographer since the enactment of the Hydrographic Act 35 of 2019. With that, I would like to invite, with a warm welcome, the national hydrographer of South Africa, Captain Nicolette Leroux.
It is an absolute pleasure to stand in front of such a big crowd here today. And allow me to say to the Chief of the Navy, if I may stand on the protocol already established, sir. What warms my heart most is to see school uniforms, because I believe that the youth is our future, and also our future mariners and future hydrographers. So a special welcome to you. The aim of the presentation is to brief you on how hydrographic data is used to map the ocean and how it contributes to ocean action. What is hydrography? It is that branch of the applied sciences which deals with the measurement and description of the physical features of the ocean, seas, coastal areas, lakes, and rivers, as well as with the prediction of their change over time. This is where your tides comes in, for instance. This is done for the primary purpose of safety of navigation and in support of all other marine activities, including economic development, security and defense, scientific research, and environmental protection. The International Hydrographic Organization celebrates World Hydrography Day on the 21st of June every year, which is tomorrow when we're holding this Rite of Entry parade. This is done to increase public awareness of the vital role that hydrography plays in everybody's life. And like we've mentioned, the theme is ocean mapping enabling ocean action. The International Hydrographic Organization is an intergovernmental, consultative and technical organization that was established in 1921 with the principal aim to ensure that all the world's seas, oceans and navigable waters are surveyed and charted, and to support safety of navigation and the protection of the marine environment. The Assembly reviews the progress achieved in the organization through the committees, subcommittees and working groups, and adopts the programs to be pursued during the ensuing 3-year period. And the official representative of each member government within the IHO is the National Hydrographer or Director of Hydrography that meets in Monaco for each IHO assembly. The object of the IHO is to bring about coordination of the activities of the national hydrographic offices all over the world, to ensure the greatest possible uniformity in nautical charts and documents, the adoption of reliable and efficient methods of carrying out and exploiting hydrographic surveys, development of the sciences in the fields of hydrography and the techniques employed in descriptive oceanography. The IHO catalogue of publications contains all IHO publications, including those that regulate and enforce standards used for charting. Because everything that we as hydrographers do and with our cartographers has to comply to international standards. There's been an ongoing transformation in navigation, such as e-navigation, like Captain Bakazal has alluded to. Autonomous shipping, reduction of emissions, and this leads to a profound evolution of hydrographic services. This has led to an increased demand for digital data products, and in this regard, the IHO plays a vitally important role. These transformations have led to the ongoing development of the new S100 product series, currently under various stages of development by IHO member states. I would like us to share a short video clip.
Did you know that as of 2025, just over a quarter of the ocean floor has been mapped to modern standards? Some of the maps used today still rely on data collected as far back as the 18th century. That's where the International Hydrographic Organization comes in.
The IHO works with more than 100 countries to ensure the world's seas, oceans and waterways are properly surveyed and mapped. From data to decisions, the IHO powers ocean knowledge.
The ocean is always changing, whether due to the movement of currents and waves or the impact of human activities. Sea level is rising, sea ice is melting and coastlines are changing. To monitor this, we rely on hydrography, the science of measuring the physical features of the marine environment. Hydrography tells us how deep the ocean is, maps the shape of the seafloor, monitors tides, currents and sea level change. This data underpins safe navigation, marine spatial planning, offshore energy, climate science, undersea cables and the growing blue economy. The IHO fosters global cooperation in hydrography. It sets technical and academic standards, coordinates activities of national hydrographic offices and interfaces with the marine industry to increase oceans, coastal areas, lakes and rivers. The IHO also coordinates training and academic programs around the globe to build worldwide hydrographic expertise.
Hydrography helps bring the ocean into focus, mapping, understanding, navigating. The IHO as a global organization is at the heart of these efforts.
So now you know a little bit more about the IHO, to which we are a member state. And we are one of 102 countries that belong to the IHO. How did South Africa become involved in hydrography? The SA Navy has conducted hydrographic surveying since 1922, with HMS Crozier later converted to HMSAS Protea. She was then followed by the converted Flower-class corvette HMS Rockrose, that was then also named Protea. South Africa joined the International Hydrographic Organization as a member state in 1951. And since its establishment in 1954, the South African Navy Hydrographic Office has played an essential role in supporting safe navigation at sea in the South African region. SAS Natal was later converted in 1957 and, supported by HMS Harlem, undertook the inshore survey work. In 1972, the Navy acquired their first purpose-built hydrographic survey vessel, the then very modern Hecla-class survey vessel SAS Protea, which is formerly or very fondly known as the White Lady. SAS Protea will be replaced by a more modern, technologically advanced survey vessel, like the Chief of the Navy has mentioned, under the project for the replacement of the capability. Now I get to do the fun part. How are hydrographic surveys actually conducted? What are the steps that we go through? So I'm going to go through each of these steps one by one. The first one is receiving the survey tasking. As the hydrographer, I will issue a hydrographic instruction. This can be done because there has been too many changes to a specific chart that warrants a resurvey. Or in this case, like the example on the screen, you'll see there was a ship that had sunk, and the wreck is indicated, the PA next to that symbol means position approximate. So we want to go and have an accurate position of where that shipwreck lies. In this hydrographic instruction, we will specify what the survey order is that must be achieved. This is very important because certain areas where underkeel clearance is very vital will have much more stringent regulations that we need to make sure we follow, where deeper areas has more leeway in terms of accuracy and how stringently it has to be applied. And this is both for vertical and horizontal uncertainties. They don't like to call it errors. We're working with uncertainty. The second phase is desktop reconnaissance. This is where we look at what we already have in our possession about the area. We look at the existing charts, we go into the archive, look at previous surveys, reports of surveys. Then we also go and look at who do we need to establish contact with in this area that we're going to be working. Are we going to be in a very remote area, in rural areas, or are we going to be in a built-up area? Then we also identify preliminary control points. This is a photo of a trig beacon, trigonometric beacon. This is part of what we use to establish control. It is very accurate for position. And control in a survey is essential to give you confidence that your data is going to meet your required standards. The next step is field reconnaissance. This is where we would like to go and visit the area where we are going to survey. We go and establish contact with the local authorities. We get telephone numbers. We know who's who in that area. We also speak to the locals. Their local knowledge of the area is invaluable. We also then go and verify control points for vertical and horizontal control. In terms of vertical control, you've got trig beacons and control points such as benchmarks. This is a photo of a benchmark. It is very accurate in its height, but not in its position. Then we also determine the support in the area for detached teams if we need to send a detached boat team that isn't going to go with the ship to go and conduct the survey. And after this visit, we will then compile a reconnaissance report that will go to the survey operations officer on board the hydrographic survey vessel to plan the survey. Now, planning the survey is where the detailed planning comes into effect. They would have looked at the hydrographic instruction. They would have seen what type of data is required, because it can be both land and sea-based. Then they need to allocate personnel and equipment and evaluate if the equipment that they have will be able to meet the standards specified in the survey. They also compile survey line plans that the boats will have to run to collect the data, and they determine the time and space requirement for specific tasks that may be time sensitive. Like, for instance, there are certain things that you would like to do at spring tide, spring high, when you're doing a beach survey. And then this is where the real fun and work starts, collecting the data. And it can also sometimes be quite frustrating, because this is where you normally have your problems in the field that you have to overcome. So I'm now going to talk about specific types of data that we are collecting as part of that step. So one of the types of data is coastlining. You see equipment on both sides of the stage. That is RTK equipment. And we can use that to walk the coastline and take positions all along the coast. You'll see two people in that photo. One is holding the rover, and the other one will be there with a notebook recording the data and also the observations, where you go from sandy areas to rocky areas, because this will all become relevant when we start putting this data onto charts. We will also verify survey control points to make sure that our survey is properly controlled. And how is this data going to end up being useful to the mariner? It delineates the high water mark, and I will show you in a later slide where this is illustrated. And we will chart any new features. Maybe there was construction that happened on the shoreline. Maybe they constructed a tidal pool. So this is where those features will be captured. We'll also use this method to ground truth aids to navigation. And we will also, in the same time while we're doing coastlining, we will also do some coastline photography that can also add to our sailing directions, which is one of our publications that we produce. Coming to the bathymetry data collection, we have single beam and multi-beam. Now, single beam is much narrower. It's a sonar pulse that gets sent out to the seafloor, and it returns and it gives you a depth. But if you look on the picture, that green track under the ship, so the ship has run a line and turned around, and she's now running the next line. In that 100 meters between the two lines, you don't know what is lying there. So there may be a feature there, but you're not going to know. Your data is not going to show it. With single beam data, we run lines towards the coast because we're looking for that maximum change in gradient as it becomes shallower. Then we also do a series of check lines that run perpendicular to those lines. And the reason why we do that is a quality check, because if your data is good and valid, if it is running in one direction and this point gives you a depth of 80 meters, the line that intersects with that should also give you a depth of 80 meters. So that's a way to check that the data that we are collecting is of good quality. So single beam data is then used to, in charting, to create depths and contour lines, and this will tell the mariner where it is safe to sail. Now, multi-beam, if you compare this slide to what the previous picture looked like, you can see a much broader area is being covered by that beam coming from the ship. It's a swath of soundings. So for every time that that sonar pings, some of the systems on board Protea will give you 512 data points every second that it sends out a pulse. And those 512 data points, it's not just the depth, it also has position, latitude, longitude, and then the depth. In this case, we run the lines with multi-beam, we run the lines parallel to the coast. And that is because of the geometry of how the multi-beam operates. So if you were to look at the, I don't seem to have the pointer here with me. There we go. If you look at the top area and you just draw a line, you'll see that that would be a short line versus if I draw a line here, it would be a much longer line. And if you picture that to be the area that is covered, as you're getting shallower, the multi-beam is, you're going to pick up the top line, so only a small footprint. As it gets deeper, you're going to get a much wider footprint. So that is why these lines are run parallel to the coast and not perpendicular like we did with single beam. So you get a much higher data density, and this also will need increased computing power to handle this size of data. And in the same way that single beam gives you depth contours, this gives you the same, but you have the added benefit of having covered those gaps in between, even if you did the same line spacing. This is a multi-beam image of a trawler that lies in the Langebaan Lagoon. Now, for those of you that may not be that familiar with looking at hydrographic data, I think it's nice to see here that the ship is quite easily identifiable as a ship. But in terms of the depth, you have to understand that the purple parts is where it's deeper. So you can see there's almost like a hole here at the stern of the vessel. And then the red and the yellow and orange, those are shallower. So that is closer to the surface of the water. So that is how you look at the color scale for multi-beam in the conventional way. So red is shallow, meaning closer to the surface, and the blue areas and purple areas are deeper, which is deeper in depth. Still on that step of collecting the data, we also collect side scan sonar data. Now today we've got 2 side scans, the one on the left here on top of the podium and one in front of me. A side scan sonar has 2 transducers next to the side of the vehicle. It gets towed behind the vessel, and it gives you that type of image as you see here on the right-hand side. Here you've got an anchor chain and the actual anchor. And you can see that if you go past, there's a part in the middle that hasn't got any data. That's called the nadir area. And that is basically under the belly of the side scan sonar. So it will only become visible again once it is on the other side of the transducer. And this is very useful for object detection. If there was something like a plane crash, which we've actually done on Protea, we retrieved the wreckage of an aircraft that crashed outside Plettenberg Bay, and we used side scan sonar to go and detect that wreckage. Another type of data that we collect, even though it isn't all over the chart, it's only in selected areas, is we do bottom sampling with a Van Veen grab. So here you see it right next to me. It is currently with the jaws in the open position. So what we do is we lower this over the side. As soon as it touches the sea bottom, it will snap shut. We then recover that, the sample, and we also record the position. So then we analyze what the grab brought up. It could be sand, broken shell, and that type of information is then placed on the chart in terms of our anchorages, because that will give the mariners an idea of the holding ground that they're going to expect should they anchor their vessel in that area. Tidal observation and measurement is not something, we don't go and set up a tide gauge necessarily while we're doing the survey itself, but we do have to factor in the tidal regime of the area that we are surveying in. And we have a tide gauge network in South Africa to record and analyze tidal data for accurate prediction services. Every measurement that you're going to take with your sonar also has an element of tide in it, because that water level is going up and down, up and down. So we have to reduce that sounding by taking into account what the tidal element is of that measurement. And that will produce a more accurate chart. Tides can also modify the routes in confined or shallow waterways. So something that may not be accessible now might be accessible in 8 hours' time when the tide comes in. So who uses tidal data? Us as hydrographic surveyors, all mariners, coastal and harbour engineers, researchers, and the general public. Another important piece of equipment that we don't have here in front of us today, but that directly contributes to the accuracy of the data that we're going to collect, is the sound velocity measurement. The salinity, meaning how much salt is in the water, determines the speed of sound through water, which is what the echo sounder or the sonar is going to do. It sends that pulse of sound energy, and this is now going to be affected by how much salinity or how saline the water is. It can vary both in where, in location, spatially, or temporally over time. And you see these effects in freshwater estuaries, surface and deep water currents, and in thermoclines. The accurate depth measurement with echo sounders are therefore dependent on the accurate sound velocity measurement. And your sound velocity profiler, as is indicated in the picture there, and then we've also got conductivity time depth sensors that gives us an accurate interpretation of the sound velocity through the water column. And this will result in better and more accurate data. So now we come to the next step. We've talked about various types of data that we've collected. Now we have to process the data. On the left-hand side, you can see multi-beam data that is not yet processed, and you see lots of spikes. And they all seem to be going in the same direction, relatively constant, and it also happens to be the same direction that the boat has run the lines in. So that is not actually how the seafloor looks there. How do we determine that? If you look at the picture right next to it, you will see that we've now colored the files by line. So the first line was green and the second line was orange. And only the orange line has got what we call that artifact in it. If that was a real feature that was present there, it would have been present in both lines. So cleaning the data can be a long and cumbersome process, and that is why it's important to collect good quality data from start to finish. The next step is to render the data with a report of survey to the Hydrographic Office. At the Hydrographic Office, we then scrutinize the data. We might send it back to the ship if we're unhappy with something, or we may decide this is good enough on the first attempt already, and we put it into archive and then put it up for chart production. During that scrutiny process, this is where the propagated errors and the total vertical and horizontal uncertainties come in. This is where we determine, based on how the survey was conducted, if it meets the order that was specified in the hydrographic instruction. Now, let's look in detail at the chart of East London. Remember, I mentioned the intertidal zone with the people that were busy coastlining. So there you can see it. So you've got low water and high water will have different parts of the seafloor exposed on the beach side. Then you've also got things like your lights, lighthouses. There's a buoy with its characteristics showing there. We looked at the control point, that trig beacon, that first photo that you saw. There's that. And if you look at these colors on the map, on the chart, every single item that you see here on this chart is specified in a technical standard from the IHO. You cannot just decide, I want the water to be this shade of blue because I like it. Okay, every color has a meaning to the mariner, because mariners need to be able to use a chart, and when they change to the next chart that is produced by a different country, you don't want all of a sudden the land is in pink and something else is in purple that shouldn't normally be in purple. It's going to create confusion. So that is the beauty of standardization of these products through the standards. Now I want to speak about crowdsource bathymetry. These two tiny devices is what is driving efforts like Seabed 2030 through JEPCO to gap fill. Because there are so many areas where there's no data available. For instance, in areas that were previously covered by ice, in the areas like Canada, ships wouldn't normally go and sail there. But with the advent of global warming, these areas are now becoming accessible, and there's no charts that have accurate data. So crowdsource bathymetry should not be confused with hydrographic surveying. Crowdsource bathymetry is the collection and sharing of depth measurements from vessels using standard navigation instruments while engaging in routine maritime operations. So when ships are transiting from one point to another, they have to have the echo sounders on. It's for their safety of navigation. And they are typically using a GPS as a source of positioning. And these little devices will just record what the echo sounder is reading and what the GPS is reading. And this data is helping to fill gaps where previously there was none. Now, how does hydrographic data result in ocean action? So how is this hydrographic data used? In the maritime sector, in the transportation sector and trade, it contributes to the efficiency of maritime transport. The no shipping, no shopping, this is where it comes in. Voyages can be shortened if there are surveyed safe routes. Underkeel and overhead clearances are important for vessels and will determine when they can enter a port or go under a... There's also your optimal loading of vessels. So if you know you have this extra amount of water available over this specific time, it can result in a decision to change how you load your vessel to get a little bit of extra transported. Fishing vessels can navigate safely and avoid the loss of their fishing gears on obstructions that are not charted. This has both an economic and an environmental on the fishermen, because their nets are expensive if they have to replace it, and nets that are obstructed and are lying in the ocean aids to ocean pollution. It also, our charting will show areas where fishing is not permitted. It may be a marine protected area. Hydrographic data is critical to the characterization and delineation of fish habitats and proper location of aquaculture areas. This is where we are busy cultivating food, like you would farm with cattle on land. We are now farming with fish in the sea, and as well as things like mussels and other marine species. The maritime defense and security sector, including for search and rescue operation, uses maritime hydrographic data. Submarines are interested very much in the depth, what the effect of the tide is, what is the local knowledge about thermoclines. In mine warfare, we are interested in how mines are going to be buried. That information can be obtained or can be predicted by looking at how currents are going to move over a specific area and what type of bottom you have, like that side scan sonar data that I showed you. Surface ships can exploit hydrographic products to give them the advantage. And in an amphibious operations, they also use hydrographic data. If we look at coastal processes and things that happen along the coast, hydrographic data is primary to the coastal zone management and coastal development. Construction and development of ports and coastal infrastructure needs hydrographic data. Dredging operations, like Captain Sunath spoke about. We also need to be able to monitor and control and predict coastal erosion. There's also a direct contribution to be made to identify and discover mineral resources at sea using hydrographic data that was collected. And also selecting routes for submarine cables and pipelines. So that slide on the bottom right is not shipping routes. Here you are looking at submarine cables and pipeline. That is where your internet is coming from. And when one of those cables gets damaged because they weren't supposed to, because they didn't check on the chart, then you get slow internet for days until it's repaired. So these are practical implications of mariners not looking at the charts always. It's also crucial for site selection for wind farms, oil and gas platforms, and any other water construction and development. It also supports the delineation of maritime boundaries defined in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It is also a major controlling parameter in ocean dynamics. It underpins prediction models, and prediction models are what is used to make decisions on land. It underpins tidal prediction models, sea level rise, ocean currents, like Dr. Halo was explaining to us about on the Agulhas current, meteo-oceanic forecasts, and we can look at what is going to happen when there's an oil spill. Where is it going to be transported to if we have correct modeling of the ocean processes? And then also tsunami inundation. How far is that monster wave going to go into the land and cause death and destruction? I would like to conclude with another short video. I hope you enjoy.
Was created, its mission was to help make navigation safer. It promoted uniformity in the thousands of paper charts covering navigable waters across the globe. In the 1980s, the IHO developed a worldwide standard, the INT chart series. This ensured that when mariners navigated around the world, they could easily switch from a chart from one national hydrographic office to the next and understand the colors, symbols and texts which were standardized. In the 1990s, this concept was extended to digital maps. National hydrographic offices, in collaboration with the shipping industry and technical suppliers, managed this evolution under the coordination of the IHO. In the 2000s, nautical charts and related information such as radar and automatic identification systems became digitally integrated and were used by all vessels on international voyages. But the IHO did not stop there. In order for marine data gathered from around the world to be used by all ocean stakeholders, the IHO is helping to increase their digital uniformity with the S100 Universal Data Model. This framework provides standards and formats for data from a variety of disciplines. This means data can easily be shared among ocean branches, marine traffic and harbour operations, coastal development and ocean sciences. It can also be meshed and displayed together, providing a complete picture of what is at sea.
The S100 framework has the potential to bridge hydrography and oceanography in order to build a fully digital marine data ecosystem, the digital twin of the ocean.
Hydrographic technology is becoming smarter. With up-to-date data, ships can calculate the fastest, safest, or most efficient route for a voyage. These technological advances will also pave the way for autonomous shipping. The ocean is crucial for the livelihoods of millions of people around the world. Marine data can be used by coastal states to make informed decisions and can contribute to the sustainable use of the seas.
With the development of hydrographic technology, the use of marine data is increasing. We are expanding from what does the sea floor look like to what is in the water. A concept we could call spatial hydrography.
From nautical charts to all ocean data, the IHO's voyage continues.
Thank you very much, Captain Leroux, for a very informative hydrographic lecture. Chief of the Navy, sir, as we close this segment of the Hydrographic Day, World Hydrographic Day 2025 celebration, it is clear that the message of seabed mapping, enabling ocean action, resonates deeply. We have explored the intricate work of the hydrographers. The National Hydrographer has presented the how we do the business. We've seen the transformative power of the data that is collected by the surveyors and the profound impact it has on every aspect of our lives that touches the ocean. From ensuring the safety of maritime trade, supporting fisheries, protecting the biodiversity, the unseen efforts of the hydrographers, or rather hydrographic surveyors, are truly foundational. They chart the pathways to a healthier, more prosperous blue economy. With that, I say, let us carry the spirit of the World Hydrographic Day forward, not just today, but every day. Let us continue to advocate for the increased investment in seabed mapping because we know the significance of it. Let's foster collaborations both locally and internationally and promote the vital role of hydrography in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I thank you, sir. At this juncture, sir, we will be moving to the final sector of the program, whereby we will have the panel list joining me on the podium, the three speakers, guest speakers that came through, the Chief Director, Maritime Strategy, and the hydrographer may join us on the podium, please. And corrections, I will also request the acting DNA to join us on the podium. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this will be actually the question and answer session from any interested party in this conference room. The panel will be ready to take on your questions. Thank you.
Let me first recognize the water presenter here, the owner of the location, which is the Buffalo City, and of course the military where Mama in the province of the Legends. I'm Advocate Nzamba from originally from defense, and now I'm also running practice dealing with cybersecurity, AI, data privacy, and extractive industries. I'm also involved in the University of the Land, lecturing the same. I must just indicate, let me preface my question. UNISA has established 11 catalytic niche areas, starting from maritime, air, outer space, cyberspace, energy, and also the issues about the gender mainstreaming. Now, the reason I'm situating this is because there's an issue that was raised on partnerships. Let me start with my colleague from forestry. As I've indicated that I deal with data privacy. And so when we talk about outer space and satellites, and the challenges that we have now in terms of the polluter pays principle, in terms of the law of the sea, I would want us to interface outer space and the maritime domain. And the reason being that if we're using satellites, there's firstly an issue of data sovereignty. There's an issue of territorial sovereignty, being a military person. There's an issue that deals with the importance of us at this stage of talking about AI sovereignty. Us using the technologies, I was waiting to listen how we verify the data, how we align with GDPR in terms of transpollination of data across jurisdictions, and I've not had it. And so I want to offer that UNISA, the oldest university, 152 years, is dealing with those issues, and we can partner. Thank you.
Thank you, okay.
Good morning, program directors. Good morning, members who have attended this hydrographic day. I have a simple question that I think will be answered very quickly by the panel. It's about artificial intelligence. How can we use artificial intelligence to enhance hydrographic surveying and data processing? Also, what are the current limitations on hydrographic technology with regards to research and development efforts that is needed to overcome them? What are the technologies that can be utilized to get into addressing the challenges that we are facing on hydrographic research? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take one more question before we give the panel a chance to respond.
Thank you very much, Project Program Director. I am Lieutenant General Strongai, the Chief of Human Resources. I think that it's important because I see the significance of the hydrographic survey vessel and also the function that is all about in terms of assisting our economic development and also ensuring that we cover the whole maritime and also all of our ocean, the three oceans that we are as a major, as a surrounding by ocean, the oceans. Mine is because I see that I've noticed that there are students that are here from the schools. What is it, I wanted to understand that for them, what is it that you are telling them and how they're going to be, how do they fit within this lecture that we're doing today, and how do we ensure that maybe how do we recruit them, what is required of them. And then the other one is that because we are referring to the World Hydrography Day, and I also want to understand how do we, the second question, how do we interface with institute of some sort that will be able to introduce our youth and also the South Africans in terms of this very rare function that we are having in the country. So for me, that is important so that we are able to guide them to deal that capacity and also the capability and also the skills that we need that they must also focus as they're charting their way to study their new lives as after the school, also universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General. Hydrographer, will you attend to the question of artificial intelligence integration? The question about the artificial intelligence integration into hydrography?
I think in terms of AI, we are very much on the learning curve, and it's something that is progressing quite quickly. The IHO as a organization is also starting to talk about AI, but not necessarily on the data processing side. That is more to do with the manufacturers of survey software, where they are also looking at machine learning to help with data processing. But at this stage, there is still a feeling amongst the IHO states that you will still need that human interface because of the fact that we are charting for safety of navigation. You cannot leave that responsibility solely to a machine, although it will definitely ease the workload if you have sufficient AI capacity to help in that processing. But because there's also a legal requirement, there's a person that is going to instruct that AI, and that person will then have to carry the legal responsibility for that data, because there is an element of liability that goes with supplying data that may have errors, because that's something that we're hearing about frequently now in the news when they talk about ChatGPT and other AI platforms, where the AI isn't always giving the correct answers. So there is still very much place for the human interface as AI develops.
It is a very good question indeed. And the AI has already started to make inroads into climate studies. However, what we need to keep in mind is the accuracy of what it gives you depends on the data that you have. Because it browses through the data and tries to develop the patterns. So in areas where you don't have data, it becomes quite suspicious, the result that it provides. So we need to be careful. It is very important indeed, hence again, that the human interference and human presence becomes useful in actually validating the patterns that are being developed. Speaking about climate science, as you may know, there's a scale of processes that at present is difficult to solve. AI is now resolving these processes and is helping more accurate forecasting. But in regions where there's sufficient amount of data for the information to be verified. We look forward when we start to apply these in our own environment around the coast, and I think is the way to go. We need to start to think how best to implement this.
Then I would like to respond to the question regarding the youth and how do we recruit them into these fields. And that is why I'm so glad that I see the learners here today. I want to tell you that mathematics and science is what we use every day in the job that I am in. Of all the things that I've learned at school, Math and science is the things that I'm still applying. And a lot of people, when you're young and you're sitting in that mathematics class, you don't necessarily understand, why do I need to learn this? How is this going to help me in real life? But take my word for it. There's so many principles that are applied. Things like your basic calculations, the sound velocity measurements, that relates into depth. That's determined by a factor of salinity. The geometry of how that multi-beam is transmitting its data, where you're going to get bad data, resonance, so things like your frequencies that you would have come across in your mathematics lectures, waves in tidal science, waveforms, sinal waves. These are things that are literally practically part and package of hydrography. So I really want to encourage you that when you stand in front of that decision point of which subjects to take, do choose the math and science. Anything that you work at hard, you will be able to succeed in. You don't have to be a mathematical genius. I'm not a mathematical genius. I was not a physics genius, but I worked hard. And it will just open so many more doors for you, because not just in the fields of hydrography. If you're a combat officer in the Navy, you need mathematics and science. If you want to be a merchant mariner, you're going to need mathematics and science. Other subjects that are also very relevant to what we do, that will give you a good grounding, is things like geography. And geography then will translate also later into geodesy, which is more mathematical, which is the study of the shape of the earth, and that will be at a higher level. But things like logarithms, if you're confronted with logarithms, I looked at that at school and I thought, I'm never going to understand this. And when I started with my hydrographic course in the UK, the first day of lecturing for mathematics, we started with logarithms. And I had to sit down and really take the time. And there are resources available that will help you to study. So my message to you is, please, don't think, where am I going to use this? The world is a very big place and there are so many opportunities out there. And if you have those two subjects, it opens so many options. Also, if you are already at matric level and you've passed that point, you can select math and science. And now you see, oh, I should have maybe made different choices. Remember, there are bridging courses. So just because you didn't take mathematics from the earlier grades, it doesn't mean that you are now doomed. There are other options available. So please invest in yourself and go and explore those avenues. Then the next, I don't know if one of the other speakers wanted to add to that.
Thank you very much, Captain. I think from the Navy side, Captain Leroux has explained the entry part of it, and maybe from the merchant shipping side, maybe some advice as well too. And it's really important, like you said, maths and science are essential subjects to study towards a maritime career. We start with the cadetships, you first get, and then I think Transnet, the National Ports Authority does have bursaries, but we also have certain programs, I think, as well, through CSI programs, where we accept students, and they basically will
General Chief HR, to answer your question on how we interact with other African states. The SADC Standing Maritime Committee is the platform or forum that we use for sharing of information, for training. Hydrography is part of the subjects that we share in terms of cooperation, training, and other maritime aspects. So those are these SADC and other regional bodies. We interact through the SADC Maritime Standing Committee. We also work with the local universities, Stellenbosch, DUT, and others, Nelson Mandela University, and other institutions like SAMSA, SAIMI, Moses Kotane Institute. Those are the bodies that we work with them, but hydrography is part of the subjects that we deal with. Thank you.
If I may also add to Admiral Mondi's comment, we also are part of the Southern African and Hydrographic Commission. Southern African and Islands Hydrographic Commission. We actually, South Africa established SADC. And that is a forum, it's a regional body, one of the regional commissions of the IHO. And the beauty of the regional commissions is you don't need to be a member state to the IHO to partake in the regional commission. Because member states subscribe, we pay a membership fee to belong to the IHO, where on the regional bodies, so like SADC, even member states that don't belong to the IHO have a forum to come and discuss and raise issues about hydrography in their region. And that is also, we have a meeting coming up in September. And that is also where states can benefit from capacity building programs that SADC hosts through the IHO at the regional commissions.
Also in the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, the government makes available internship programs where you can apply for these programs and you are allocated a grant and internship for 2 years. And you are actually free to choose in which research group you would like to affiliate with. So we have a component that is a physical oceanography, we have another one that is biological oceanography, and the other one that is chemical oceanography. Based on where you want to go, you can actually apply for those specific branches or sections within the branch, and even choose a supervisor to work at the very personal level with you throughout those 2 years. And we have had very nice experiences. At the end of internship, we have students who are able to publish. In fact, one most recent experience, our intern has just published in South African Journal of Marine Science on validations of numerical models, skills that she learned when she came in. So please, just be aware of those opportunities. They are advertised openly. So apply and you will be hosted for 2 years, receiving grants and keeping you going and developing skills that you can apply in the industry.
Thank you, Prof. Director. I won't be long. Like I said, I think a lot has been covered. And since a lot of questions about hydrography, I left them to Captain Leroux. When it comes to the absorption of the youth within the maritime sector, we also have the South African International Maritime Institute that plays a vital role in raising awareness about maritime careers. So I wanted to urge the school, like the school teachers, to actually liaise with the institute to actually find out what is available out there and not just limited to seafaring. Seafaring is important for all the reasons that I explained earlier today, but then it's not limited only to seafaring. There's a lot that is out there. I'm not sure, Mr. Mtati, how much you have gathered about hydrography within the scope of SAIMI and Maritime Careers Awareness. If not, then Captain Leroux is your person. Thank you.
I would like to take one final round of questions, if there's any, before I wrap. Dr. Malaza?
Thank you, Program Director. It's Dr. Kusuma Laza from the Institute of Maritime Technology, which is a division of AMSO. My question is more on SAMSA presentation. When you indicated that one of your responsibilities is to do the serious commission, and you indicated actually the area that you are responsible for, and we've seen that it actually goes beyond our EZ, all the way towards to the southern part of the world. So my question is, obviously to do a serious, you need to have visibility in that area. So what type of specific sensors that you have and that you use in order to see specifically beyond our EZ? So that's my question, Minister.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. Looks like we must pick our respondents. I'm looking at Dr. Hallo. For me, it's about the role that hydrography plays in the impact of climate change on all our oceans. And also maybe we can look at how can hydrography be used to support the development of sustainable blue economy. Thank you. And my name is Peter Lebelo from the Defense Secretariat. I'm Chief Defense Material. Thank you.
She was before you, but okay. Can I get your question quickly? Then I'll take 4 in this round, and then the next question will come from the lady at the middle seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, afternoon, everyone. Good day. Dr. Tamalaji, IMT. My question is similar to my colleague here, but in a different form. It's connected to climate change. I think mainly directed to the sort of academic or technical crew presenters. The question is, how do we feel as South Africa in terms of our readiness and preparedness in terms of climate change, and so that because it's something that is not obviously active, because some of these things we are not necessarily controlling, it's nature controlling itself. But I just want to get a sense of your comment in terms of how are we feeling, are we ready, are we doing all the proper interventions for us to not forefront. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Vishal Servan from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. Dr. Harlow, you spoke about the oceanographic research and the work of your department and the data gathering and that process that you've taken place. My question is, to what extent does the research that you do overlap with what the Hydrographic Office's research is doing? Are you duplicating work? How do you cooperate and exchange data and information to make it more effective? And then Captain Lulu, with regard to the mapping itself, the actual physical charts that's done with under the IHO standards, do you plot the submarine cables on those actual charts? So that was the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last question for this round is, yeah, thank you. I recognize you. No, not you, sir. The lady in black and white. She was the first one. Thank you, ma'am.
Hey everyone, my name is Pam Godley. I'm a business development specialist, energy specialist, representing, I think, the business community within this area and in South Africa. We know country is challenged in terms of job creation, and it's the entrepreneurs that are creating the job opportunities. So I didn't hear a lot of the role that entrepreneurs can play within this space. I heard you are migrating to digitization. So what is it that they can contribute? Like, I know within Eastern Cape there's the potential of small harbors that are going to be growth areas, and we have the smaller fishing communities. So how is the smaller fishing community assisted by this hydrography day? And how can they grow? What is the data that can assist if you talk about fish that are migrating from KZN to is that information available for the smaller fishing communities? If you talk about expanding Port St. John's or Hamburg is the smaller ports, what is the information that is going to all those players that are going to be participating in those smaller ports and then growing? So I think it's more the entrepreneurs, and also I didn't hear a lot about energy. While we talk about sustainability, and we are moving towards being green in our ships and in everything that in the digitization that we're moving towards conserving energy. So I want to hear what is it that you're doing around green economy and around entrepreneurs and encouraging job opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll go to the answers from the panel. I think the first question was directed to Captain Mbakaza about the census.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to the gentleman from INT for the question. We do work closely with INT when it comes to maritime domain awareness issues. As you saw how large that area is, it's very difficult to actually monitor all of it from the land. And South Africa is tasked with one of the largest in the world, in the global SAR plan. I think it's the 5th largest, that of Australia. They've got a large one as well. I think it's Chile or Argentina, one of them, New Zealand. They've got a very vast area of responsibility as well. But then such technologies as the AIS, Automatic Identification System, comes to play when it comes to monitoring and actually coordinating the rescues in the area. More so within the 200 nautical mile space. But then beyond that, we also substitute like the terrestrial data, AIS data that we get from the likes of Transnet with satellite AIS, which enables us to see beyond the 200 nautical miles. Not that it's also perfect, it's got its gaps here and there. It can also be substituted with such information as LRIT, though primarily LRIT is used for security purposes, but INZO has enabled the Rescue Coordination Center to actually request for information when they are undertaking maritime rescue operations. And you know that it is a legal requirement for especially soulless seagoing vessels to have such equipment on board. Further to that, rescue coordination centers rely a lot on what we call vessels of opportunity. Vessels have the ability to monitor each other, so that's when the rescue coordination centers will then appoint coordinator who's able to have the eyes and ears in the area and then report back to the coordination center on land. That's how we manage to do rescues some 200, 300, 500 nautical miles away. And South Africa has been commended in the global stage for that. Thanks.
There's two questions that I would like to discuss now by Professor Sam. Yes, the work that we do at the DFFA does complement research that other centers at the universities also are doing. It's not essentially such an overlap or just repeating the work. No, actually it complements. And in fact, there are issues that internally we are not more specific in connection with the presentation I gave about how to process mathematic data. At the DFFE, we don't have that capability. That's why we have biological oceanography, physical oceanography, and chemical oceanography, but we don't have a geological oceanography. Then we rely on colleagues from the University of Free State, from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where those skills are available. So in that way, we actually complement the task. Is not an overlap. The second, in connection how AI is influenced or could be used to influence the hydrography, especially on the work that we do. I like to look at these from ocean modeling perspectives because ocean models allows us to make forecasts. We know what today is, we are concerned on what tomorrow will be. If we want an accurate model that is representing the ocean state well, key parameters are needed. Let's say we want temperature of the water, we want the salinity, how salty the water is. And with that, we want that information right from the sea surface going all the way to the sea bottom. If we use these profiles, we are able to derive by well-established mathematical equations. We use relations that will help us to give the density of seawater. Now, that internal displacement of seawater actually is the drive of all internal processes in the water column that drives the circulation patterns. Now, from observation standpoint, if we collect the data at this point here, because of how much it is involved, the next point where we collect the data in many cases are very much like 100 kilometers away, 25 kilometers away, and we don't have information between those points. Okay? So we are missing some small-scale processes that when integrated over a period has a bearing on the final results that you have. So here is where the downscaling of those data will be important. Here is where the AI will be really useful to derive those profiles of temperature and salinity at significantly close distance between the sampling points. That will be good. Then, in solving the hydrodynamic equations that will lead you, that will move you from the boundary conditions that you feed your model to the final product that is derived, there's a formulas, mathematical equations that need to be solved in time and space. Now, how fast those computations will be, here is where AI can be quite useful in help us to solve those dynamics. As I said, there's so much scope to be used in hydrography studies, and I think it is important that we take this into account. In places where it has been used for weather forecasting, for instance, has proved to work well. So surely artificial intelligence can be very useful in that regard. Yeah. I don't know if this answers your question, but we can take offline as well to go into deeper details of these aspects.
In terms of the question about entrepreneurs okay, so I'm not so much from the business aspect, but there are always, whenever there is development in the ocean, and there are actually projects afoot, they want to, I forget the specific name now of what the equipment is used or is named to produce energy. It is close to the Richards Bay area. So I've recently seen a document from DFFE where they have to go through all the process of getting inputs from the public and giving time for comment. So these things are happening around our coastline. And when those ventures get approved, there's always going infrastructure that is generating energy offshore connects to the grid somehow on land, and there's going to be maintenance that needs to be done. There's going to be spare parts that need to be provided. There needs to be tenders that, or small boats that go out to the installation to put technicians on to do maintenance on the actual installation offshore. So these are all potential opportunities in terms of entrepreneurs that can actually translate that into a business plan. And then just to respond to the question on submarine cables, yes, we do actually chart those submarine cables. You'll see them as little lines. If we might have one of the charts at the display that actually shows it, then I can show you practically. But yeah, and you know, the mariners don't always look where they decide to anchor, and then they get into trouble by damaging these underwater infrastructure.
The Navy cannot offer you business people, business opportunities, but we provide a safe and secure environment for you to conduct your business.
We have arrived at the end of this segment of the celebrations of the World Hydrography Day 2025. And thank you very much to everyone for your participation. I would like to really thank all our speakers, our panelists, our exhibitors, and especially each and every one of you that took time out of your schedule to be with us here on this very momentous day as hydrographic surveyors. Your presence here signifies a collective dedication to the future of our oceans. So on behalf of the Chief of the South African Navy, Vice Admiral Mondelo Bisi, I want to thank you for joining us for this part of the celebrations of World Hydrography Day. May we all work together to ensure that our oceans are not only safely navigated, but let us also ensure that our oceans are understood, protected, and are sustainably managed for generations to come. With that, I wish you all a very wonderful remainder of the day. Thank you very much. Danke, tatenda, muito obrigado. Encontro.